Hi everyone, Ashutosh here from ProdEgyIAS. Welcome to the Public Administration Orientation 2. This is one of the lectures in the series that we have started for the students who are going to be the part of the foundation program or who wish to study public administration for the mains. Optional obviously requires a very detailed understanding. When you say detailed, it is with relevant or it is with respect to the relevance of the exam. When I say detailed, obviously we are not looking for a JRF or a NET exam. We are not looking for a master's exam, but we are looking for a competitive exam, which obviously requires a lot of out-of-the-box, non-stereotypical thinking. As you see, the university patterns are designed around what will come. The competitive exams are designed around what may come. So there is a difference where in the first, you are more sure about what exactly is going to come. In the second, you are not very sure about what exactly is going to come. So it is a difference of perception, the way you view things. Right? So starting on that note, this is a orientation which will, or this part of the orientation is for understanding, right, what is the domain of public administration? How? Because in the previous lectures, we have talked about general ideas, what public administration is. But this will be more about the scope, the nature, and how do we visualize what public administration as a subject is. What makes administration so important? What makes administration so curious? What makes administration so central to the governing of society? So, as you know, paper 1 of public administration starts with the idea, the meaning, scope, definition, right, nature of public administration. So this will be a very, summarized, conclusive understanding of what public administration is. As most of the students always say, where do we start? So where do we start? We need to start from the starting line. We cannot start from the finishing line. You cannot just read some definitions and say, oh, this is what PubAd is, right? Somebody says, oh, public administration is about managing the affairs of the government. Yes. But what does exactly this mean, managing the affairs of the government? It itself poses a lot of problems, a lot of issues, that what is the managing means? Affairs of the government, right? Is it for the people or is it for running the government? So there are a lot of, I would say, small conceptual errors that we make when we start understanding the optional. And eventually we have, or we cry foul that UPSC is not rewarding us. Why it is not rewarding you, right? Because are you able to evolve yourself? You want to maximize the benefit of this optional in GS and so many other areas, but you're not doing this optional itself properly. Right? Somebody scores good marks and you just run after his sources and resources. No, it's not like that. The way that person has understood the concept, the way that person has understood the ideas, okay, that may be very distinct from yours. So let's start with the very basic idea, or how do we visualize this subject called public administration. In general, the administration, right, which is very vital for many other papers in general studies, which is also vital for writing a lot of good essays, right? For example, if I say the purpose of administration is to serve and not to govern, right? Now let's say there's an essay on that, right? Corruption, right, is a way of life for administrators. So there are a lot of themes, right? Good governance is ultimately the justice that can happen to society. See, so there are a lot of ideas, right, which public administration as a subject nurtures. And this is where a smart student opts for this subject, not merely just to get 300 marks or 290 in this subject, but also to use this subject wisely. And I'm using the word wisely again, because that is where we need to work. That is where we lack our approach. We want to finish the syllabus and not necessarily understand it. So most of you, right, feel that we get notes and content and yes, this is done, I'll mug up it, right? But that is not the nature of this optional. The nature of this optional is so generalized. It is so simplistic that most of the times we forget what is the essence of the paper. We try to just mug up more content and content and content and content and ultimately lose the very logic on which we are trying to develop this content. So we will talk about that idea, right? So let's say, so one of the primary facets of studying public administration in today's context, right? Or in general, when you talk about your subject for UPSC, right? One of the prime reasons for this studying is the existence of democracies. Obviously, democracies provide the very basis, the very ground for understanding the role and importance of administration. If there were no democracies, there were no administrative systems, right, which would be working for the society, for the people. There would be administrative systems, but they will be working for enhancing, strengthening the power of people who are sitting at higher positions. So those systems would be elitist, monarchical systems, dictatorial systems, right? And obviously not the dictatorial as 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 talks about, but there will be the kind of systems which will be centralized around groups, individuals, traditional groups, traditional elites, religious elites, and likewise. So obviously that idea of public administration is not the essence of what we are going to study. So we will study the idea based on democracy. Now see, Ambedkar has used very interesting idea, right? Ambedkar says that democracy is what? Democracy is a mode of associated living, right? It is a means, it is a mechanism by which we live together, right? Based on the ideas of liberty, equality, fraternity, right? It is the very notion of mutualism. Mutualism is where we all believe that we can exist together, and existing together only is the best way to live together, is to live, right? So we do not deny the contribution of each other in our lives, obviously to make it much better. Mutualism is the basis, right? In that regard, as you know, that the role of the government or the administration becomes very vital, because government or the state is the system which creates this collective feeling. Otherwise, you are an entrepreneur, you are an organization, you are a private sector, you are an industry, you are an individual, you are a household, right? You mostly work for your own benefit, or maybe benefit for few people around you. But it is the state, it is the government which represents the collective will of everyone. And to obviously implement this collective will comes the role of administration, right? So obviously the strength of democracy are people. People who are coming together and sharing their life, they're sharing their needs, sharing their requirements, right? Desires, interests together. And that is how they are nurtured in a democracy. Self-governing is also a part of democracy. Shared governing is also part of democracy, right? So collective and individual, how can they coexist? And where obviously the collective will have more purpose for maintaining democracy, right? But it is not majoritarian. It is not dominance of one majority over another minority. It's not like that, right? Everybody will have that. That is mutualism. Everybody will have their role and contribution. So how to maintain this idea of democracy? How to maintain the very basis of mutualism, collectivism, collective living, collective interest, social interest, how to take this idea forward, how to preserve this idea, how to maintain this value system. That is the role of public administration. So public administration, in simple terms, is a system that maintains the very essence, the very basis, the very philosophy, the very value system of the democracy, preserves it, protects it, promotes it. Right? So public approval or public acceptance becomes vital to governing. And that is why there emerges a need for creating a system called civil services or public administration, governing people collectively and not individually, not the privileged, not the elites, not the few, not those dominant minorities, not them. It is a system that works for all, and that is the distinction between private administration and public administration. Fine. So the idea that yes, public interest, public opinion, public acceptance becomes vital, gives the or provides the need for emergence of public administration, gives the legitimacy to public administration, and that is how public administration emerges. So in every society, right from the traditional, right from the nomadic period, we cannot deny that there was no form of administration. There was. Nicholas Henry, in his book, which is a very popular book, says that bureaucracy was visible in the bones, or it is there in our bones. He's trying to say that bureaucracy or civil services administration has a historical significance. Every form of human association that would have existed on this planet would have some form of administration, right? Not maybe a system as organized as today, but there must be some form of arrangement for them to live, prosper, protect, survive, grow, whatever. And therein lies the beauty of administration. So your exam, your civil services system, your entire administration or administrative system, entire governance is a consequence, is dependent, is implied within the study or understanding of public administration. So what society wants, what society goes through, what society needs, what society faces a crisis, what problem society has, all will somewhere become the part of the study of public administration. Politics, administration, society. Lower level, regional level, national level, local level, international level, all integrated together. Right? So when you talk about nation, we say national governance. When you talk about local, we say local governance. When we talk about state, we say regional governance. When we talk about globe, when we talk about international or globalization perspective, we say global governance. Fine. So it is obvious that governments which have been given the authority to manage the society, to use power to govern, right? They obviously govern or use power because they have been mandated, they have been legitimized, they have been accepted by the people, the public. Okay. So when you look at the ancient texts like Arthashastra or even reference to Mahabharata, you will find that there has been a constant need, constant struggle, right, to find out, to understand what is good for the society. So in detailed analysis, the Kautilya or the Chandragupta, the king Chandragupta, right, the beginning of the Mauryan dynasty. So their primary purpose was to bring or to overcome the Nanda dynasty, to create a more ethical, more meaningful, more moral, more peaceful way of governing. That was the idea. So Kautilya has also described in detail in his Arthashastra, right, the art of governing, the science of developing a good administration, and then using this science to govern the society better. Mahabharata That is why you see the fight, the war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas was not called a war. It was not just a yudh, it was a dharma yudh. Why it was a dharma yudh? Because that is the idea that how, why we are doing something, right? Why we are fighting this war is obviously to protect the dharma, the ethics, the morality. And ultimately, that is the basis on which we need to govern. That is the basis on which we need to exercise power and authority. So the primary concern of the modern studies of public administration has been how to make the government's role in the society more ethical, more meaningful, less corruptible, more efficient, more acceptable, and somewhere pro people, pro citizen. Right? So even references when you see Arthashastra, he refers to the king as having the roles of Palan, Rakshan, right? Yogakshem, that is welfare. Palan, that is look after. Rakshan, that is to protect. Yogakshem, that is the welfare. So see, that is the undying notion of an administrative system. So democracy provides that very framework under which the modern public administration systems flourish. Right? There has been a constant understanding of politics and administration and society relationship, right? That is the trijuncture, the three, where the three come together, right? So that's the trijuncture of, of how the administration needs to be understood and society. So this trijuncture is necessary to be understood, that how the role of administration is being impacted by politics, and probably how it is impacting the society, and how society impacts the politics, and again the process goes on. That is the bottom line of the study of administration. Right? Obviously, the subject matter, the content of public administration, right, comes from the American sources. Two major sources have been there, or two major origins of the sources of the study of PubAd emerge, one from the European, one from the American. Obviously, there are Indic sources, that is Indian sources, right? Whether you talk about Megasthenes, whether you talk about Kautilya, right? Whether you talk about Ashtadhyayi, that is Panini, whether you talk about Mahabharata, the 𝗬𝗵𝗵𝗀𝗲 of Mahabharata, right? And lot of other references are there. But as you know, as we understand very simply, that the printing press developed in Europe, right? And that gave a lot of boost, Gutenberg, right? So that gave a lot of boost to the modification or the mobility of the content and the literature and the knowledge, right? From the West to the East. It made things more easy, more mobile. So most of the literature, most of the references that we make for public administration or for general humanities, right, they come from the European context or the American context. Specifically for public administration, right, Europeans have also made a major contribution, but because, like I said, the very basis of the emergence of public administration in the modern context is the democracy. So most of the times, the reference of the origin of PubAd is given to the American perspective, to the American democracy. People say that yes, there was an essay written by Woodrow Wilson in 1887, and that becomes the basis, right? But that is not totally true. You have to go back and understand what were the constitutional debates or debates around the Constitution in USA, right? So how a lot of other contributors emerged in USA, and what kind of culture emerged in USA, right? What kind of constitutional values they aspired for, or they inhabited, they acquired, and these values, how they shaped their understanding of politics, administration relationship, politics, administration, society relationship. So Jefferson, Madison, and likewise, right? So Hamilton, and so we can look for various references. Even in American context, historical, yes, no doubt, the Wilson becomes more or less a more vocal, more straightforward, more what you can say, tangible, more visible contributor to the emergence of public administration. So there are Western context, European and American. There are non-Western context, Chinese, Indian, right? And other references are there, fine. And to understand, obviously, the entire nitty and gritty, the entire scope of public administration, you somewhere have to start thinking from here, right? It would not be an exaggeration to use the statement given by one of the public administration scholars called Dwight Waldo, that one-line definition of public administration is mental paralysis than enlightenment. So he says that is it possible to define PubAd? Is it even necessary to define public administration? Is it even, required to somewhere put public administration into few words? He says no, it's not needed, because that will take away the actual understanding of public administration. Another scholar puts it that public administration is visible from the womb to the tomb, before you're born to after your death. So administration is so omnipresent, administration is so integral to our lives that we can hardly think of anything in our life happening without the influence or without the interaction of administration. Though times have changed, globalization has come, technology has come, a lot of other developments have taken place, and they somewhere are changing the role and the nature of public administration. Still, in countries like India, where you see the obsession with civil services, you see the obsession with government jobs, still indicate that how vital is the government to governance of the society. Even if the West is running away from the government, the West is looking for alternative to bureaucracy, right? It is true that we still believe that bureaucracy must be the center of the governing in the society. The collector is still an aspirational post in India for most of the educated people and not so educated people. So we cannot rule out, right? So somewhere the public administration as an area of study has evolved itself from a nomadic life that we were living, right, to a more subsistence life, right, to a more organized life, to probably feudal systems, to mercantile systems, to capitalist systems, to industrial systems, to panchayats that we used to form. So in many forms, administration as a function, administration as an activity, administration as a system has always existed. So it would not be, again, an overspeak to say that administration is integral to human civilization. Right? So, okay, you can understand this way that, okay, if we start with this thought, if we start building our ideas based on this logic, ultimately, right, we will be where we are aspiring to be. And that is how the road less traveled is taken. That is how the road to 300, what you say, you aspire, can be taken. But mind you, this process is not simple. None of the process is simple in a country of 148 crore people. This process is not simple. This process is not cut and paste process. This process is not stereotyped, right? It doesn't go through PPTs and pointers. If you think of that there is a smart work, yes, there is a smart work, but there is not a short work, right? The smart work only matters when behind that smart work, the huge amount of hard work has been put. Smart work is only a manifestation, it's a consequence of the hard work which has been done before it. So kindly keep this perspective in mind. We'll come up with the next lecture on, or we'll take up actually the syllabus now and let you understand the vocabulary of the syllabus, which will also be very vital, right? Keep watching us. Stay tuned. All the best to you, right? Any of the ideas related to public administration, whether it is governance or polity or ethics, right? We will be covering within the boundaries of this subject. And that is where we need time. That is where we understand things in a descriptive manner. And that is where the need for those aspirants, those people, right, who really believe that, yes, this is the subject of the future. This is the subject which is the core of the civil services preparation. So people, when they come with that motivation, they eventually qualify, right? Look at a lot of students we had, right? Whether rank 14 or 36 or 18 or 42 or whatever, right? So it doesn't matter. Okay, they all started like you. They started with very basic, right? Many of them, uh, they did not even have the basic understanding of the vocabulary, which they did over a period of time, right? So obviously you must come with that mindset, clean slate, right? And we will build upon that idea, don't worry. Fine. So thank you so much for watching us. All the best. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.